This episode of The Deep Dive is brought to you by Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. A series of AI-narrated meditations designed to feed your intellect and challenge conventional wisdom.
Yes.
Each bite-sized episode is packed with thought-provoking ideas, surprising facts, and insightful analysis, all designed to spark your curiosity and expand your understanding of the world. When you think about a life-saving discovery, what comes to mind? Do you picture a lone genius working away in a lab? Or could it be that crucial solutions often kind of come from unexpected places?
Places like maybe even the federal bureaucracy.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the first place you think of, right?
Not exactly known for being a hotbed of innovation, is it?
But Michael Lewis, the author, he said something about the slow journalistic marketplace that really stuck with me. Basically, that there are these incredible stories hidden within these seemingly boring government departments. And no one's really paying attention.
And that lack of attention makes it seem even more, well, boring, I guess.
Exactly. So for today's deep dive, we've got a whole bunch of sources, like a ton, that point to this idea that there's this vital, impactful work going on that we just don't hear about. We'll be looking at everything from ancient cathedrals to, get this, the IRS fighting cybercrime.
The IRS, huh? That's not what they're known for.
I know, right? But there's so much more to it. And then there's the National Cemetery Administration and the National Archives, these institutions that are quietly doing this incredibly important work. We're on a mission here to uncover these stories, to show you the dedication, the innovation, the real impact that's happening within the government. And we'll talk about why these stories matter, directly to you, the listener.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover. Where do we even start?
Well, let's start with something completely unexpected, okay? Gothic cathedrals.
Gothic cathedrals, what do they have to do with government?
Bear with me, okay. So there's this guy, Robert Mark. He's an engineer, right? Spent his career in aerospace. But he got this idea to apply aerospace engineering techniques to understanding, of all things, Gothic cathedrals.
That's a pretty unusual combination.
Right. I mean, you'd think understanding these centuries-old structures would be like the domain of art historians or architects. But Mark, he approached it like an engineer with this super rigorous analytical mindset.
So what did he actually do? Did he just study blueprints and stuff?
Oh no, it's way more interesting than that. He built these physical models, like scale models of sections of these cathedrals out of plastic. Then he would load them up with fishing weights.
Fishing weights? Seriously?
Yeah, to simulate the real weight of the stone. And get this, he even used historical weather data to figure out the average wind speeds back in the 12th century when a lot of these cathedrals were built.
Wow. That's incredible.
Right. He was trying to recreate the actual forces these structures would have faced back then. It sounds almost whimsical, but the insights he gained were huge.
So what did he learn? Did it change the way we understand these cathedrals?
Oh, absolutely. Those pinnacles on cathedrals? Those really ornate, pointy things sticking up?
Yeah, I always thought those were purely decorative.
Me too. But Mark's work showed that they actually serve a structural purpose. They compress the mortar beneath them, kind of like tightening the strings on a tennis racket, making the whole structure stronger. It's this incredible example of form and function being intertwined.
Wow. So he basically discovered something that even the original builders might not have fully grasped.
Exactly. And it shows you how expertise from one field, like aerospace engineering, can totally change our understanding of something completely different, like centuries-old architecture.
Okay, so we've got Gothic cathedrals and aerospace engineering. What's next?
Well, let's shift gears completely. We're going from these soaring cathedrals to the dark, cramped world of a coal mine in West Virginia.
Okay, this should be interesting.
This is where Robert Mark's son, Chris Mark, enters the picture. And this is where it gets really fascinating.
What was he doing in a coal mine? I thought we were talking about engineers.
He was. Chris is a Princeton grad, PhD and all. But he ended up working in this coal mine alongside miners whose biggest concern wasn't some abstract theory. It was making a living, staying safe, dealing with the immediate challenges of that really tough environment.
I can imagine that was a bit of a culture shock.
Oh, definitely. It really highlighted the difference between the world of academia and the realities of hard physical labor and immediate survival concerns.
So what was he doing there? Was he doing research?
Yeah, he was trying to apply his knowledge to improve mine safety. He saw the high fatality rates, and he wanted to make a difference, even though there were already regulations in place.
It's one thing to study something in a textbook, but being there, facing the real dangers, that must have been a whole other level of understanding.
Absolutely. It really shaped his path. He realized that the industry wasn't always open to safety research, and academic institutions didn't have the kind of access he needed. So he ended up at the Bureau of Mines within the federal government.
The Bureau of Mines. I didn't even know that still existed.
Right. Most people don't. And it wasn't exactly glamorous. He started out in this kind of isolated basement office, but he didn't let that stop him. He even created his own title, Principal Roof Control Specialist.
Wow. Talk about taking initiative.
Right. And he came up with this thing called the stability factor, basically a formula to assess the risk of mine and roof collapses. Initially, it was well received by coal mine engineers. They saw its potential to prevent accidents.
So what happened?
Well, the problem was that every mine is different. The geology varies so much that one formula couldn't account for all the variables.
So it wasn't a silver bullet.
Sadly, no. And then there's the tragic case of the Crandall Canyon mine collapse. Remember that?
I vaguely remember it. It was a huge disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, 8 miners died. And the really heartbreaking part is that the mining company, they ignored Chris's Miller design formula, the one he developed to prevent these kinds of collapses.
Oh, wow.
It's a stark reminder of what can happen when expertise is ignored, especially when lives are on the line. And there's this debate, right, about how mine safety actually improved over the years. Some people say it was just market forces. But when you look at Chris's work, his dedication, his research, the efforts of people like him within the government, it tells a different story.
It's a reminder that government agencies, even the ones we don't think about much, can have a really significant impact on our lives.
Absolutely. And think about this. 2016 was the first year with 0 underground coal miner deaths from falling roofs. It's not a coincidence. It's the result of decades of work by dedicated people like Chris.
So from the depths of a coal mine, let's now turn to, well, a different kind of solemn space.
You mean like a cemetery?
Exactly. National cemeteries, to be precise. When you think of government bureaucracy, you probably don't picture meticulous care and deep respect.
Not exactly the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's precisely what you find at places like New Bern National Cemetery. Those perfectly aligned headstones, they speak volumes about the dedication to honoring our veterans.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of Ron Walters, the head of the National Cemetery Administration. His story is really interesting. He wasn't always on this path. He was interested in faith and intellect, and he admired these seemingly contrasting figures like Billy Kilmer, the football player, and Chris Everett, the tennis star.
Not exactly what you'd expect from someone leading a government agency.
I know, right? But his career path within the VA shows a real dedication to public service.
Yeah.
He rose through the ranks because of his analytical skills and his unwavering commitment.
It's about serving something larger than yourself.
Exactly. And the history of these national cemeteries is so important. They were created after the Civil War, this effort to bring the nation together. And today, they're still fulfilling that mission, repatriating war dead, bringing them home.
It's that ongoing commitment to honoring those who served.
Walters has a quote about this that I love. He says that national cemeteries are the places where the price of freedom is more visible.
That's really powerful.
Yeah. And he's not just about symbolism. He actually implemented this management approach called the PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act, all about continuous improvement.
You don't always hear about that kind of systematic approach in government.
Right. But it's working. Veteran trust in the VA is rising, and the NCA consistently gets really high satisfaction scores. Even during challenging times, they're delivering.
What?
And Walters, he also pushed for innovation. He championed the Veterans Legacy Memorial, which is this digital platform where families can share memories of their loved ones.
So it's more than just a physical space. It's about preserving stories, keeping those memories alive.
Exactly. It's really powerful. And even Secretary McDonough, the VA secretary, has said that the private sector could learn from the NCA's example. That says a lot, I think.
It does. It shows that even in government, there's this drive to innovate, to do things better.
So we've gone from ancient cathedrals to coal mines to national cemeteries.
Where to next?
How about space? Specifically, the search for exoplanets, planets beyond our solar system.
Now that's a topic that captures the imagination.
Definitely. And there's this prediction that we'll find evidence of life on another planet, even if it's just bacteria, within the next 25 years. Think about that.
Wow. That's pretty mind-blowing.
I know, right? But seeing these exoplanets, these planets orbiting other stars, is super hard.
Yep.
Like imagine trying to spot a tiny firefly next to a giant spotlight.
That's a good analogy.
The star's light is just so overwhelming, it drowns out the faint light reflecting off the planet. But that's where NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory comes in. They're working on this amazing technology called starlight suppression.
Starlight suppression, what's that?
Basically, it's about blocking out the light from the star so we can actually see the planets around it. And one way to do this is with a coronagraph, which is like a special instrument on a telescope. The Nancy Grace Roman SACE telescope is going to have one, and it's going to be a game changer. And then there's the Habitable Worlds Observatory, which is the next big astrophysics project that's going to push things even further.
So we're getting closer and closer to being able to see these planets directly.
Exactly. And think about this. The field of exoplanet discovery has exploded in recent years. We now know of thousands of exoplanets, and there are probably billions more out there in our galaxy alone.
Billions of planets. That's just incredible.
Right, and one of those discoveries was made by this woman named Vanessa Bailey at JPL. She discovered this planet called HD 106906b. And what's really interesting is that when she made the discovery, there wasn't any big fanfare, no self-congratulation. Instead, there was this emphasis on teamwork and acknowledging all the people who came before her at JPL.
That's a great example of humility. It's not about individual glory. It's about the collective pursuit of knowledge.
Exactly. And there's this story about a tour group at Kennedy Space Center. It included, get this, Alan Parsons, the musician, and the creators of Angry Birds, and the NASA personnel were just incredibly down to earth and humble.
That's so cool. Even with all the amazing things they've accomplished, they haven't lost sight of the bigger picture.
And Bailey's discovery, it actually came about because she had fresh eyes. You know, she wasn't bound by the same assumptions as everyone else, so she was able to spot this planet in a really unusual orbit.
That's the power of a fresh perspective. Sometimes you need someone to come in and look at things differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But finding Earth-like exoplanets, planets that are similar in size to Earth and orbit within the habitable zone of their star, that's a much bigger challenge.
Why is that?
Well, those planets are much smaller and fainter, and they're closer to their stars, which makes it even harder to see them against the glare of the starlight. That's why these advanced coronagraphs are so important. They need to be incredibly precise to block out just the right amount of starlight.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack while someone's shining a spotlight in your eyes.
Exactly. And it's amazing to think that Nancy Grace Roman, for whom the telescope is named, she predicted this decades ago. She was a pioneer in the field of space-based telescopes, and she knew that a coronagraph would be essential for finding these distant worlds.
Wow. Talk about a visionary.
Right. But there's another, even more ambitious idea out there. The starshade.
The starshade. What's that?
Okay, so imagine this. A giant space flower made of gold foil, like something out of science fiction. It would fly in formation with the telescope millions of miles away, casting a shadow that would block the starlight and allow us to see the planets.
Wow. That's incredible. But is it even possible?
Well, that's the big question. It's a super high-risk, high-reward kind of project. It's a lot more challenging to build and deploy than a coronagraph.
Right.
But if it works, it could revolutionize the search for exoplanets.
So it's a gamble, but potentially a huge payoff.
Right. And there's this guy, Kim Aaron. He's the chief engineer at JPL, and he's really confident in the starshade technology. He's got decades of experience, and he's not one to be easily impressed. So when he says something's going to work, people listen.
So it's a long shot, but maybe just crazy enough to work.
Now, I want to take a quick detour here, just a brief aside. For those of you who enjoy insightful and positive stories that often get overlooked by the mainstream media, I recommend checking out Mindful Moments, a YouTube channel that uses AI to analyze audiobooks and highlight these hidden gems of wisdom.
That sounds interesting. I'll have to check it out.
Okay, back to our deep dive. Let's talk about something that might not conjure up the most positive images. The IRS.
The IRS. Not exactly known for being warm and fuzzy, are they?
I know, right? And Commissioner Werfel, he's even said that the IRS is iconically unpopular. They've been the butt of jokes for years, you know, like that Simpsons clip where Homer's being audited.
Oh, yeah, the one where he says taxes are like the worst thing ever.
Exactly. And even their building, the IRS headquarters, has this surprisingly discreet signage. It's almost like they're trying to hide.
Like they're a little ashamed of what they do.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And they face these huge budget cuts and staffing shortages, which has created this massive backlog of paper returns. It's a mess.
So not exactly the most efficient organization then.
Not really.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Within the IRS, there's this Criminal Investigation Division, CI, And they do this incredible work that most people have no idea about. They're involved in some of the biggest cybercrime investigations in the world. They're tracking down stolen cryptocurrency, busting child exploitation rings, taking down these huge criminal enterprises that operate online.
That's not what I would have expected.
Right. But here's the thing. There's this agent, Jared Koopman, and his story is amazing. He's got this fascinating background, black belts in martial arts, collects vintage trucks. But his work within the IRS, it's largely unknown.
So he's like a secret agent.
Kind of. He stumbled into this whole world of law enforcement within the IRS almost by accident. He started out working on white-collar crime, but then Bitcoin came along, and everything changed.
Bitcoin? That was such a Wild West back then.
Exactly. And at first, no one really took it seriously. It was seen as this idealistic, decentralized thing. But Koopman and his team, they saw the potential for both good and bad.
The double-edged sword of cryptocurrency.
Right. And they had this crucial insight. The blockchain, the technology behind Bitcoin, it's immutable. Every transaction is permanently recorded. It can't be altered. So even though the identities are masked, the transactions themselves leave a trail, and that trail can be followed.
So they figured out how to trace the money, even though it was digital.
Exactly. And they used that to track down the stolen Bitcoin from Silk Road, this huge online black market. They recovered $3.36 billion for U.S. taxpayers.
Wow. That's a huge win.
It is. But there's another case, the Welcome to Video case, that's even more impactful. It involved this global child sexual abuse website, one of the worst ever discovered. And Koopman's team, they located the website and its operator because of a simple technical mistake he made.
That's incredible. They shut down this horrible operation because of a tiny slip-up.
Yeah. And they were able to rescue children from unimaginable harm. It's a reminder that this work, it's not just about numbers, it's about real people's lives.
Okay, I'm starting to see the IRS in a whole new light.
Right. And then there's the investigation of Binance, this massive cryptocurrency exchange. They were accused of violating U.S. financial regulations. And Koopman's team, they had to get really creative to track them down. They even searched AWS help desk logs. Imagine that.
So they're using cutting-edge techniques to go after these global entities.
Exactly. And they found that Binance was knowingly enabling U.S. customers to evade regulations. That had huge implications for the financial system.
So they're not just going after small-time crooks. They're taking on some of the biggest players in the game.
Absolutely. And Koopman, he could be making way more money in the private sector, but he stays at the IRS because of the mission. He's driven by a sense of service, a desire to make a difference. And Commissioner Warfel, he's trying to modernize the IRS, bringing more technology, improve customer service, go after high-income tax evaders.
But they're trying to change the image of the IRS, make it more effective and more responsive to taxpayers?
Exactly. And Warfel, he's really frustrated by the negative narrative around the IRS. He sees Koopman's team as like a nerdy SEAL Team 6.
That's a great way to put it. They're the unsung heroes of the cyber world.
Right. And they're doing this vital work that most people have no idea about.
It's this side of the IRS you don't hear about in the news.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to our next story. We're going from the digital world of cybercrime to the National Archives and Records Administration, KRA.
NRA, that's where they keep all the old documents, right? Like the Constitution and stuff.
Exactly. And there's this woman, Pam Wright, who's leading the effort to digitize NARA's vast collection of records. We're talking about billions of documents.
Yeah.
And it's about making those records accessible to everyone. It's a huge undertaking, and it's all about transparency and public access.
It's about democratizing history, making it available to everyone, not just academics and researchers.
Exactly. And Pam's personal story is really interesting. She grew up in rural Montana, and they didn't have a lot of access to technology back then. So she knows firsthand how important it is to be able to connect with information, and that really drives her work.
It's about leveling the playing field, making sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn about history, regardless of their background or where they live.
Exactly. And her leadership style, it's very understated. She's not about taking credit or being in the spotlight. She's more like, let the work speak for itself. And she's created this amazing online platform called History Hub. It connects the public with archivists and other history enthusiasts.
So it's like a community for history buffs.
Yeah. It's incredibly supportive and nonpartisan. People can ask questions, share their research, help each other out. It's really cool. And the kinds of things people are discovering on History Hub, it's amazing. Military records, family histories, all sorts of stuff.
It's like a treasure trove of information just waiting to be uncovered.
Right. And I was recently researching my family history, and I found these records related to Berlin airlift training in Montana. I had
No.
no idea my grandfather was involved in that. It's just incredible what you can find.
That's so cool.
And there's this retired zoology professor, Joel Weintraub, who volunteers on History Hub, and he says that archival research is a lot like bird watching. You have to be observant, you have to know what to look for, and you have to be patient.
That's a great analogy. It's about noticing the details, the subtle clues that can lead to a bigger discovery.
Exactly. And Pam, she has this really thoughtful way of looking at things. She once said that life and legacy are kind of like a combine tilling soil. It's about leaving your mark, contributing to something larger than yourself.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about being part of something that continues long after you're gone.
And the National Archives, it really does reveal the democracy of death, as someone put it. Like my grandfather's Cherokee Nation citizenship application, it's there alongside the records of presidents and generals. It's a reminder that everyone's story matters.
It's about recognizing the shared humanity that connects us all.
Exactly. And Pam, she embodies this idea of a civil servant who's truly dedicated to serving the people. She's working to make our history accessible to everyone, which is something we should all be grateful for.
She's a quiet hero working behind the scenes to make a real difference.
Absolutely. Okay, for our final story, we're going to the Department of Justice, specifically the Antitrust Division.
Antitrust, that's about breaking up monopolies, right?
It is. And there's this young woman, Olivia Reinberg-Going, who works there, and her story is really inspiring.
What's so inspiring about working in antitrust?
Well, you have to hear her perspective. She's a paralegal specialist, so she's not a lawyer, but she's deeply involved in these cases, and she's just so positive and passionate about her work.
It's not exactly the image people have of government work.
I know, right? But she sees antitrust as a way to promote fairness in the economy, to level the playing field for everyone. She's really interested in civil rights, and she sees this connection between economic opportunity and social justice.
That's an interesting perspective. It's not just about breaking up big companies. It's about making sure that everyone has a fair chance to succeed.
Exactly. And her family, they're really interesting too. When they were deciding where to live, they made this incredibly detailed spreadsheet that factored in things like the Black and queer population of different cities.
So they were really intentional about choosing a community that aligned with their values.
Absolutely. And Olivia, she's been involved in activism for a long time. She was active in the fight for same-sex marriage in California. She's a real advocate for what she believes in.
She's not afraid to stand up for what's right.
Exactly. And she loves living in D.C. She appreciates the diversity, the politically engaged young professionals. She feels at home there.
It's great that she's found a place where she can thrive.
It is. And she has this really refreshing take on the American dream. She doesn't believe it should come at the expense of others. She wants everyone to have a chance to succeed.
That's a more inclusive vision of the American dream.
Definitely. And we also hear from Kathy O'Neill, who's an antitrust lawyer. She explains why she loves working in this field. She sees it as a way to promote innovation and lower prices for consumers.
So it's not just about abstract legal principles, it's about having a real impact on people's lives.
Exactly. And she breaks down these complicated antitrust laws, the Sherman Act, the Clayton Act, the FTC Act, in a way that's really easy to understand.
That's so important. People need to understand how these laws affect them.
Absolutely. And her favorite antitrust case, it's the breakup of AT&T. Do you remember how expensive long-distance calls used to be before that?
Oh, yeah. It was ridiculous.
Exactly. In that case, it led to more competition, more choices, and lower prices for everyone. It's a prime example of how antitrust enforcement could benefit consumers.
It's about creating a more level playing field, giving smaller companies a chance to compete.
Right. And there's another case going on right now, the UFC antitrust lawsuit. It raises all sorts of interesting questions about competition and fairness in the world of sports.
It shows that these issues are still very relevant today.
Absolutely. And we also hear from Max Stier, who heads the Partnership for Public Service. He's all about improving the federal government, making it more effective, and he's nonpartisan. He just wants government to work better for everyone.
That's refreshing to hear, especially in today's political climate.
Right. And he's concerned about the lack of young people entering public service. He sees people like Olivia as the future, and he wants to make sure that government is attracting the best and brightest.
It's about investing in the next generation of leaders.
Exactly. And Luke, he makes a great point about how effective antitrust enforcement benefits the economy as a whole. When there's more competition, there's more innovation, more jobs, more growth.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Right. And Max Stier, he reminds us about the history of the civil service, how we moved away from the spoils system where government jobs were just handed out to political cronies.
It's a reminder that we need a professional, merit-based civil service to ensure that government is working for the people, not just for the powerful.
Absolutely. And there's this real sense of hope for Olivia's future, this belief that young, dedicated people like her are essential for the health of our democracy.
It's inspiring to see her commitment.
It is. But she also brings up a really important issue: student loan debt. It's a huge burden for young people, and it can make it really hard to pursue a career in public service where the salaries aren't always as high as in the private sector.
That's a serious problem. We need to find ways to make public service more accessible to everyone, regardless of their financial situation.
Absolutely. So, has your view of where crucial solutions come from changed a bit? I hope these stories have shown you that there's this amazing work being done within the government, often by people who are deeply committed to making a difference.
And it's happening in the most unexpected places, from the depths of a coal mine to the vastness of space.
And the common thread is this dedication to mission, to problem solving, to serving the public, even when no one's watching.
These are the unsung heroes, the people who are quietly making our lives better every day.
So, as you go about your day, think about the ways that government touches your life. Think about the safety of our food and water, the roads we drive on, the schools our children attend, the air we breathe. It's all connected to the work of these dedicated individuals.
It's a reminder that government is more than just politics and bureaucracy. It's about people working together to solve problems and make a difference.
Exactly. And if you're interested in learning more about these stories, please subscribe, share this episode with your friends, and check out the links in the show notes. And as always, stay curious, question assumptions, and keep thinking critically.